Acho que está ok. Democracia. Olá, pessoal. Espero que vocês estejam me ouvindo. Agradeço a todos vocês, agradeço a presença de todos vocês aqui. E agora eu já vejo aqui um contador. Então, boa noite, pessoal, tudo bom? Meu nome é Rafael, eu sou professor do INBIO e eu vou ser o mediador hoje aqui dessa apresentação. Queria agradecer a todos vocês. Queria dizer também que nós temos uma programação bastante grande ainda ao longo da semana. Queria que todos vocês pudessem entrar lá no site do INBIO e consultar a nossa programação. Temos várias palestras ainda ao longo da semana e gostaria de pedir a participação de vocês. Já vejo aqui que o professor Ivo fez uma pergunta: quem será o mediador? O professor Ivo, sou eu mesmo, tá ok? Pessoal, eu queria primeiramente organizar aqui com vocês como é que vai ser a forma de fazer perguntas, né? Eu queria que vocês colocassem perguntas no chat do YouTube. Assim que vocês colocarem, a gente vai ter uma equipe aqui que vai juntar essas perguntas e depois vai traduzir essas perguntas para fazer para o David. Então, caso vocês tenham alguma pergunta, eu peço, por favor, que vocês escrevam no chat do YouTube. A gente vai estar acompanhando para pegar essas perguntas, traduzir e depois apresentar para o David ao final da apresentação. Então, a qualquer momento, tem uma pergunta, coloca lá, mas ela só vai ser lida ao final e o David só vai responder ao final. Então, primeiramente, eu queria fazer aqui uma apresentação do David, né, que é o nosso palestrante. Deixa eu abrir aqui. Pessoal, o David Levering, né, ele é um profissional experiente e apaixonado por educação científica, especialmente na área de paleontologia. Atualmente, ele ocupa o cargo de diretor do Museu Steinberg de História Natural nos Estados Unidos, no estado do Kansas. E ele tem uma experiência diversificada no quesito de liderança e gestão. Ele atua como diretor de educação e divulgação do Museu Steinberg e atualmente lidera projetos inovadores, como o programa de ciência do Museu Steinberg, do qual ele é fundador, que arrecada mais de $220 mil por ano. Ele possui uma vasta experiência no desenvolvimento de programas educacionais presenciais e virtuais para estudantes de todos os níveis. Ele lidera a criação de mundos virtuais interativos para a educação, como o Steinberg Museum Metaverse. Ele realizou trabalhos de prospecção e escavação de fósseis, além de treinar alunos em técnicas de campo. E ele desenvolveu um curso virtual de geologia do Ártico, utilizando realidade virtual e inteligência artificial. O David ele demonstra um forte comprometimento com a divulgação científica e implementação de tecnologias inovadoras para a educação. Então, é uma grande honra em tê-lo conosco aqui nessa noite. E gostaria de dizer também que ele foi um amigo, né? Um amigo na época que eu fiz o meu doutorado sanduíche. Então, é uma grande honra ter o David aqui dando essa palestra para a gente essa noite. Então, agora eu vou voltar para o inglês aqui, só para avisar para o David que a gente já vai começar e a gente vai seguir aqui com a apresentação dele. Então, pessoal, muito obrigado. Obrigado pela presença. Qualquer comentário, só colocar no chat que a gente vai juntar aqui ao longo da apresentação. Muito obrigado. So, David, thank you for doing this. It's a pleasure. It's our honor. So, it's up to you now. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rafael, so much for that introduction. And thank you for inviting me to come and speak to you all today. I've been really looking forward to it, and I'm excited to hear your questions once we're done with the presentation. As Rafael was saying, I'm going to be here talking about, we have here on the slide title, kind of a bringing together training in ecology and evolutionary biology and my self-training in entrepreneurship and businessy things in the work that I've been doing at the Sternberg Museum of Natural History for the past almost 11 years. So a little bit more about me. I got started with science education as a camp counselor. I grew up in the state of Oregon here in the US, and it's over on the West Coast. It's north of California and south of Seattle. And I'd been interested in paleontology pretty much my entire life since I was a kid. And so working at a summer camp really gave me an opportunity to help um, other young people who were interested in these topics as well. So here's me with one of my first groups of students as an instructor at this summer camp I worked at in Central Oregon, out in the desert, where it is lots of rocks and fossils and volcanic-y geology and stuff like that. Um, and so this is a 2-week program that I taught. Here's my camp counselor, and this is my whole group, and we did a lot of cool stuff, and it was super fun. And this young woman right here, right next to me, is actually somebody who I still keep in touch with, as well as a couple of these other students. So there's some very long-term relationships that really meant a lot to me through this work, which has been a very big motivating force. So during graduate school, I worked as a seasonal field paleontologist in the state of Idaho for the National Park Service. So basically going out and doing field surveys, finding fossils, documenting them, and bringing them back in to put into a collections facility for use in research. So I spent a lot of time walking out in the hot sun, picking up very old remains of all kinds of mammal critters, camels, fossil horses, rhinos, all the way down to rodents, rabbits, saber-toothed cats, things like that. Fun work, difficult, but for me at the time, a lot of fun. Following coming to the Sternberg, this is the best way I can summarize what I've been in my position at the museum. Finding all kinds of ways to expand the reach of the museum and increase the reach of paleontology science education through the work that I do. And then more recently, taking the entrepreneurship and kind of business stuff a lot more seriously, doing work with online education, as well as the in-person stuff that I've been doing for the past 10 years. I believe Rafael covered some of this already, but I'll very briefly just put this up here again. My bachelor's in geology at University of Oregon, where I worked on applying locomotor biomechanics, so like mechanical physics, to questions in terrestrial vertebrate paleontology, as well as at Oklahoma State, where Rafael and I met in the same lab, Dr. Barney Lutbeg's lab, in the now integrative biology department. I think it was zoology back then, where I did extinction ecology across the Cretaceous Paleogene boundary, which is the extinction event that wiped out all the non-avian dinosaurs, as well as lots of other stuff. And this is what I've been up to since, including coming to the Sternberg in 2013, establishing the camps in 2014, which I still work on, and then virtual education under this title, starting really this year in a much more serious way. So to summarize, I'm basically a paleontologist / applied ecologist by my formal training. I have a lot of training in geosciences, but the questions that I'm interested in paleontology have a lot more to do with communities and populations and evolution, more than it does the rock record of paleontology. So I'm a lot more interested in the animals and their changes over time and how they interacted with each other. So to cover some terms that I'm going to be using, a quick review. So some key concepts in ecology that I have found very helpful to think about in the basically running kind of a business and operating these summer science camp programs and other things that I've been working on at the Sternberg. Things like niches, specializations, carrying capacity, all of these terms are very familiar to us in ecology and evolutionary biology. They are frequently used and fundamentally important to our understanding of these concepts. In my studying of kind of entrepreneurship and business concepts, I have found there's a lot of carryover in our understanding of how kind of human financial systems and markets and all this businessy stuff has a lot of connections and translation to standard concepts in ecology. So we'll start with presenting a problem. Here in the US, at least, there's a really big issue with students pre-college having access to opportunities that can help them build experience and meet people and build skills and stuff like that. There's some students who come from very wealthy communities who have lots of opportunity access. There's a lot more students that do not come from those wealthy communities who can often have a real challenge with getting access to these opportunities. One, just because of proximity to the people that can help them, and two, money. So those are our two major issues in these students being able to pursue the things that they want to do for a career, whether it's biology, geology, paleontology, or anything else in the sciences. And entrepreneurship is all about diagnosing a problem, finding a place where there is an issue, a difficulty that some group is having, and finding a solution that you can sell to help address that problem. And so everyone across the board wants their kids to be able to have access to opportunities that are going to help them once they get into college and help them find a career. That's universal for parents. It's not just the wealthy families. It's not just the lower income families. It's everybody. So my solution to this problem, which, just to throw it up again real quick, opportunity access for pre-college kids, was to see if I could build a machine of sorts that could create opportunity for all of these kids, but would specifically and intentionally be accessible to the students who did not have basically as many resources in their home or in their community compared to their much wealthier peers. So how do we do that? How do we provide something to everyone that is desirable for the folks that have a lot of resources and is accessible and desirable for the folks that have fewer resources? How do we bring this together in one place and create that equity? So this is a question and something that I've been wanting to do since before I got into grad school. There's a friend of mine who actually worked at the summer camp in Oregon, and I basically sent her a plan on how to do this 15, 20 years ago, which she dug up a few years back and was like, hey, look, you did all the stuff that you said you were going to do 2 decades ago, which was kind of neat to see. And something I want to be really emphatic about is that when you're in academia, it often feels like the only system that you can work within, at least here in the US, this is kind of a thing that we've encountered, is the only way to address problems sometimes is to stay in academia. And if you're not in academia, then you're completely out and you're not able to address some of these problems you have. My problem was, how can we get a greater diversity of students able to access these careers, regardless of their household income, basically. And I want to emphasize that you can work on problems that you care about that are academic adjacent without staying in academia. You don't have to stay in that system in order to contribute. There are ways, if you try, and if you're creative, and if you pursue novel avenues, as well as some of the things I'm going to talk about later in this talk, where you can still engage and contribute without being inside of a university or inside of a college or anything like that. So this is kind of the system that I started thinking about, as far as making all of this work. How do we take these students and insert them into this system? So social and financial capital is basically just who you know and how much money, financial resources you have access to. The opportunity access is something that you can get with either knowing people who are going to give you opportunities because you've earned them, you've impressed them, they want to bring you onto their team, whatever the case may be. And financial is like paying for a summer, being able to do a summer internship, or paying to go to a summer camp or anything like that. You're basically buying opportunity access, which is a very common thing. It's what a lot of our school and training models past, like public programs, at least here in the US, are based on. So what does that opportunity access get you? You have an opportunity. What are you going to do with it now? Well, hopefully you are using that opportunity you have in some kind of field that you're interested in pursuing as a career. You're going to gain skills. You're going to meet people. That's the networking part. So skills could be anything from technical stuff, like learning how to use some kind of computer software. It could be learning how to sample out in the field, like doing field work. It could be learning how to process data. It could be learning how to do stats, coding, all kinds of stuff. It gives you things that you can keep doing to contribute to a team after you're no longer at that place. Networking, meeting other people who then know who you are and know that you do good work and will send you things like other opportunities. They'll say, hey, you did a good job at this thing, and I know you do good work and that you care and that you're a professional and all this good stuff. Here's another thing for you to look into that might be a good fit for you. And that is big. And you can also get a job that will pay you with the skills that you're gaining through this opportunity. And if you're getting a job that's paying you, then you have access to financial capital. And if you have people that will vouch for you and that know you do good work, now you have access to new social capital. And you can basically keep investing and leveraging these things over and over and over again to improve your likelihood of getting some other outcome, whether it's like a permanent career position or getting a promotion within a job. This is basically the system. So how can we take kids before college, train them in how the system works, and get them to start using it to their advantage? Well, we can do that through a summer camp, which is a known system here in the US. Parents know what summer camps are. They send their kids off. They go and do a thing for a week or two. They come home. And that could be a sports camp. It could be academic camp. We have all kinds of stuff. And in this case, it's an academic camp, mostly focused on things like paleontology. A lot of kids really like dinosaurs and rocks and stuff like that. It's a very common interest. And so we can use their interest in these topics as future careers to attract them into this program. And we can start training them from a relatively early age in how paleo and geo and biological sciences actually work as career fields, not just how they've seen them on TV or maybe read about them in a book, but actually doing it. And they get to meet people. That's the networking. They're gaining skills. They're working with my staff, who are also scientists and educators. And we're offering long-term support via online tools. Like we have a Discord space and we do a lot of social media work. So it's not just they show up and leave. It's they show up, they engage, and then they get access to a community of other current and former students and staff that will continue to kind of self-support. And so as this thing builds, the students that come in have access to a larger and larger built-in network system that is meant to be kind of self-supporting. And to point out how this has worked in the past, this young woman, Margie Cohn, was a student of mine back in 2016, very early in this program. She is now, and has been for a fair few years, I think since maybe 2017, has been a staff member of mine. She started as a counselor and then a teaching assistant, an instructor, and now she is what's called a program assistant, which means she helps do a lot of behind the scenes work for the program. And she actually just got a job as the education curator at a natural history museum in Georgia. So these systems can really do a lot and make a lot of difference in outcomes and supporting students and helping them get to the places they want to go. This other young woman, Addison, has been in our program since 2019. She's starting as a staff member for me this summer. And she's a fantastic young lady who had basically started her own business in order to go to summer camp, and does all kinds of cool stuff in her community and has been super engaged with our program for a long time. And she's very far ahead of her peers because of her engagement with this self-reinforcing system. The students kind of have to buy into it. Like if they don't want to engage with how all this works, which is fine, that is a choice that they can obviously make, they're not going to see as much benefit, which is something that we really try to get them on board with. Usually they do, but sometimes they don't. The ones that do typically see better outcomes. So this is the program I was talking about, Sternberg Museum Science Camps Plus. The Plus is basically all the stuff that we do beyond just coming out for summer camp that I was talking about before. It is fully fee funded. We don't really have any grant funding at all. There's pluses and minuses to that, but the reason I like staying fee funded is because it is very sustainable. You're relying on people wanting to come back, wanting to engage in order to support the program, as opposed to one granting agency giving you a large chunk of money. Whereas if they don't, the whole thing is sunk. We really focus on skills training. We really also focus on getting them ready for working with professors in college. Something called the hidden curriculum, at least here in the US, where it's all of the soft skills that go into success in a professional setting. So that could be how to send a professional email, how to talk about science in kind of a professional way, all the stuff that they're not going to really get in high school, but will really help them in college as well as in professional settings further down the line. They also meet this big community of peers, and we have a pretty aggressive scholarship strategy. So students that otherwise would not be able to afford to attend, and this is the opportunity machine thing I was talking about a bit ago, students that would otherwise not be able to attend can get financial assistance based on their level of need and what we call merit. So basically they have to write a cover letter and get a recommendation letter, which we use to determine like how serious is this student, how much do they seem to care about the topic. And they can get money that we are generating through this program's basically financial machinery to take the cost of a program and bring it way, 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 way down. We are lowering the barrier to entry for this entire opportunity engine for the students that otherwise would not be able to access it. So now we're going to talk a bit about how this was done. So growing something from nothing. When I started this program in 2014, there was literally no infrastructure for it. I did a couple of rounds of raising funds and basically just running programs every year and building it up to now. We have, I believe, 120 students with programs from North Carolina on the East Coast to California on the West Coast and everything in between. So the program has almost tripled in size since 2022, and it's doubled since last year. So these principles can really do a lot of good if you are leveraging them effectively. And I will get into all of these in just a sec. So thinking about ecology, which I mentioned at the outset, product development is kind of like finding the specializations that an organization, some kind of entity that generates value, it's what you do. And so for these camps, what we do is we offer these educational programs, these individual summer camps. That is the product that we are presenting people. It is not necessarily the full value or the outcomes, but it is the thing that they are buying. In order to do this, you need to ID what is your customer, what is a community's problem, what are you solving for them, and they are giving you money to help them with. And in a lot of cases, the problem they're looking to solve is getting their kid experience before they go to college and to see if this is a career they actually want to do. Now, the question there is the thing you want to do a large enough problem to get big? Is it enough of a problem to even get medium size? If it's too small of a problem, you're not going to be able to do what we call scale up your operation to make it financially sustainable. In order to develop these products, you're going to have to try a lot of things. They're going to fail. we have so many camp programs that we have attempted to run in the past that just no kids signed up. And we maybe offered them 1, 2, 3 different times. No one's interested. Great. Toss it. And then also assessing the cost of developing all of this. I've done a lot of fundraising. We're kind of past that part now. We can generate a lot of the funds internally. But if you can't do that, then you need to think about how you're going to cover the initial financial components. So how to do all of this? Look into the problem. Go out, talk to people, get online, whatever it is you need to do, and do your research on that problem and see if anyone's actually already solved it. You may have some idea that somebody else is already fixing or is working on, you just didn't know about it. So do your due diligence, do the research first. Talk to the people who you think this problem is affecting. Don't just make something and expect people to buy it from you. That is a huge trap, and it's a great way to kind of tank your entire operation before it even starts. So talk to the people that you are trying to solve a problem for. You cannot do this stuff in a vacuum. What is a low complexity solution that you can do with the skills you have? You should work on improving your skills, but what's something that you can do quickly, that you can start selling, that will bring value to people that they will pay you for? Because that's the entire ticket. And as far as the funding, if you can find something small that you can start selling immediately and you can gradually expand, it's what we call bootstrapping. So you're basically self-generating funding. You can also find outside funding sources to kind of get you started, which is more what I did. And then once you have some momentum, bootstrap from there. Marketing. So this is the space you are occupying, the niche that the thing you are doing is in. This requires understanding your own brand. You're going to have to look into connecting with other entities and finding ways, like finding collaborations is often a good idea. If people don't know you exist, they're not going to buy things from you. They're not going to pay you for whatever service or product it is that you are attempting to provide for them. Some of this you can do through creating stuff to share on the internet. So content creation on different social media platforms that you might have access to. And social media, if you leverage it right, if you use it intelligently and strategically, can be an incredible tool for doing this kind of thing. So what is brand? A brand is the thing that you are known for doing by people in the community that you're trying to serve or in the community that you exist in. It is what you say, it is what you do, it is what people say about you, about your operation. Finding ways where you can share communities and share resource access with other entities that have similar values and goals is a great way to kind of speed things up. You don't want to be exploiting these other entities at all, but you want to find ways where you're both going to be benefiting from these partnerships. Creating content that you can share for marketing where you're not paying anything, you're just putting content out that people really like and engage with. That is the best way to do it, but you can run paid targeted ads on social media. I've done both, and once I figured out how to do both of them well, they've both been successful in different ways. So I recommend just kind of trying out a little bit of everything and seeing what seems to really work. That's another thing about this to really emphasize. A lot of your ideas are going to fail, and that's okay. That's true for everybody that tries to do stuff like this. If you're trying to do something new, it's probably hard, and hard things tend to have a high failure rate. So your job is to be smart and to stick with it long enough to find the thing that's going to be successful without spending too much money or anything like that. Another way to do this is to teach people the skills you have. Everybody has skills, especially if you've been to college and received some kind of specialized training. So how can you communicate those skills and teach people stuff through social media, through in-person operations? the thing that you're trying to do in this case is become what's called a key person of influence. So you are developing your own brand as somebody that knows about a topic, and you are communicating that to other people. And in the course of providing that value to your community, hopefully they will come and also see that you have other stuff that they can buy from you and will take advantage of those other value opportunities that you're presenting to them. So this has been a really big thing for me, this camp program, is finding other entities that I can partner with in the paleontology community, where we are both going to get something beneficial out of it. This can be things like accessing respective audiences. It can be literally me budgeting in and cutting them a check for some kind of service that they're providing. And a lot of this is based on being present, being known in the communities I exist in, and doing all this networking. So meeting people, making sure that they know who I am, developing relationships, developing friendships with people that we can mutually benefit in the values and goals and things that we're trying to pursue. So a real crucial part of this is, again, knowing your community and being present. What are some of the problems your community is facing? What are some of the things that it's working towards? If you don't understand the thing that you're trying to help with, chances are it's not going to go well. So work within spaces that you have a good understanding of. And if you don't feel like you have a good understanding of it, you're going to have to do some work. You're going to have to do some research. Then your challenge is to increase people's awareness of what it is that you're doing. Again, if you have a personality for making videos and stuff like that, this is something that shouldn't be necessarily terribly difficult, but it's something that you should still be putting a bit of thought into as far as being strategic. Partnering with other entities where you have communicated in advance that any money that's raised through some operation that you're doing or something that you're creating is going to be shared, so that you're both putting in labor, but you're both getting a good deal out of it, is really important. Don't do things that are going to feel unfair to the other party. While that might be a good short-term strategy, it is not a good long-term strategy for growth and success, because you'll basically lose trust. And without that trust, it's going to be a lot harder for you to get things done and be an engaging and welcomed part of that community. Some of the best ways to do this are to actually contribute and generate and provide value for that community. So I'm a member of the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology. And some of the best things I ever did as far as building my network and building my people's awareness of who I am and the kind of work that I do was to join committees within that society and contribute to the inner work that the society is doing. Not just paying fees and being a member and showing up for talks, but actually helping the society do things for membership. So instead of being only on the receiving end, being on the kind of production side of this academic society. And that's a really good way to meet people and get people to see the kind of work that you're capable of doing. It's a really great way to network. Highly recommend. Financials are also super important. I wish that it wasn't, but it's not something you can really avoid, because if you are not paying attention to this stuff, your operation is going to go bankrupt. You're not going to be able to hire people. Everything goes south very quickly. So I look at financials like carrying capacity. So how much can you support? What is it that you can do? Is the thing that you're trying to do, or the community that you're doing it in, is it a desert? Is it a prairie? Is it a rainforest? How much life, how much activity can this support? And so in this, you're going to be looking at things like a term called economies of scale. So in some cases, if you're doing something small, for a small number of people, it's going to be very cost prohibitive. It's expensive to do that thing once. And so if you're doing it once for a bunch of people, your economy of scale is kind of bad because you're not really bringing in much in return for all that work. If you can produce one thing and that one thing is desirable by a very large number of people and you're not having to produce a new one every single time, your scaling works really well because your labor has only been exerted once, and you are getting a lot of resources coming in for that work that you have done. And this goes for other things like running conferences, anything that involves the number of people being important, whether there's number of customers, number of people paying fees to attend a meeting. The more people that you can have involved, the greater leverage you have with your scaling. Pricing is also important. If you charge too little, it's going to be really hard for you to make that economy of scale work. Startup burn is basically how much money does it take to get rolling. You're going to have to be paying rent. You're going to have to buy groceries. You're going to have to do all these things to sustain yourself as you are getting this rolling. So you should not just immediately go out and hire 5 people because now you have 5 people that you have to pay and no money coming in. So how much money are you burning during the starting process? Keeping your startup burn low is important. Gross versus net is just money that you're bringing in that pays for the operations, what pays for the thing you're doing, versus the money that you take home at the end of the day, or like money that you pay your staff or whatever the case may be and how you're dividing that up. This is something to pay attention to. If your costs to do something total is to do it once is $1,000, and you're charging $1,100 or something like that, that means you're actually only making $100 each time you do this thing. You might want to check and see if people would pay more for it, so that you can get your margins up. And then donor cultivation. If you're working in kind of a nonprofit sector, having people that will give you money because they believe in the mission of this thing that you're trying to do, they believe in the work, even if it's not something that's going to generate a lot of profit, a lot of that net funding, having people that will help sustain the operation, donate money because they believe in what your mission is still something to really keep in mind and pay attention to. So as you're increasing size, finding ways where you can decrease your overall costs as you're expanding. So it's not 1-to-1. If you can go 0.2 to 1, basically shrinking expense as you grow your numbers, you're going to scale really well because you're going to be able to do less work while bringing in more money per person that's engaging with what you're doing. Investigate the space. Again, I know I keep saying this, but look into what other people are doing. If you're charging half as much, sometimes people will assume that you're providing half the quality and they're not going to buy from you. If you're charging something similar, that's probably a better place to start. If you charge a little less, you might be able to beat your competition on price, but there's a question of if you can beat them on scale and sustainability, and that's going to be a case-by-case question. If you charge more, people might assume that it's a higher quality product, and even if it's virtually the same, they will pay that higher price if you can create the impression that it is better. And I'll be honest, we've increased the cost of these summer camps over the years, mostly because our cost of running them has increased. But our enrollment, the number of students signing up, has not decreased as those prices have gone up. If anything, it's increased substantially. So don't be afraid to raise your prices to make the thing that you're doing work properly. You can't provide anything if you're out of business. Understanding how the resources and money you need to get started, super important. Crowdfunding, fundraising online can be an important part of a strategy, especially if you're looking to raise a bunch of money, but you're not doing something where you need like millions of dollars. If you need like a few $1,000s, this can be a really good place to start. Scaling. We've been talking about that a little bit, and we're going to talk about it some more. So how big is your market segment? How many people might want the thing that you are creating? In this case, I know that there's plenty of kids out there that like dinosaurs and like paleontology. And so I have some concept of the size of that market segment, at least in the United States. Finding a way to get the dollar values up and not drop back down requires, again, research and strategic thinking. You're also going to have to potentially scale staff. You don't want to grow and grow and grow and just keep giving people more and more work. You have to be smart and equitable in how you are dividing work up, whether that's between a small team or a team that is growing or whatever the case may be. And iteration. Some things are going to go great and some things are going to go horribly. To a point, don't force things that are going badly. Try your best, but if it's just not sticking, if nobody wants it, don't over invest in something that clearly is not working. Know when to cut your losses. Very important. So as far as hiring goes, and we're going to talk about this more in just a moment, the mistake some people make is over hiring too quickly. And so like, oh, I have this giant team. We have all these people to do all this stuff, but then you have to pay all of them. And if you over hire too quickly, you can find yourself unable to grow properly because all of a sudden you're having all these people you have to pay and some of them may not be necessary. So that is a very tricky thing to manage, but it's really important to know how to manage it effectively. And that goes also into the burnout or the startup burn that we talked about a second ago, as far as hiring. How much money do you actually need in order to make this work initially versus a year, 5 years, 10 years down the line? But you also don't want to burn people out. You don't want to exhaust them so that they can't contribute effectively anymore. So managing people's workloads, honestly, is really crucial as you're growing, especially because if you grow really fast, which is great, all of a sudden you're going to find yourself with people who are being super overloaded because your demand is so high. And finally, listen to your customers. Listen to the people you are providing a product or a service or some kind of value for. They are the ones sustaining your operation. If you're not listening to them, they may abandon you, and then your whole operation is toast. These are some of the longest standing staff that I have. This is Margie, who you saw earlier. This is Margaret Wolf, who's another former student turned staff member. And I've been working with them for quite a few years, recruiting really solid people, mercilessly going after excellent people is really important. Do not cut corners when it comes to hiring. Personality, skills, all of the above. It is hard. The hardest part of what I do, bar none, is recruiting staff to run these programs and avoiding people who are not going to be able to do a good job, which means I need a lot of applicants so I can find the 20% of them maybe that are going to be a really good fit and have the personality, knowledge, and skills to do what I need them to do. Then you want to try to hold on to those folks. Retention is also really important. Being able to recruit well requires also being known. It's the networking stuff I've been talking about a few times already. If people know that you do good work and that you are a fair and kind person, they're more likely to recommend people come and work for you, which is a huge help. Pay your people. Do not expect them to work for nothing. That comes into how much you're charging. If you have an excellent team, you're doing really good work and providing a good service or a good product, make sure people are compensated or they're going to leave and then your operation is going to suffer. And finally, developing people inside of your operation. If you have a really talented person, make sure that you're not just keeping them in one place. Give them opportunities to grow or they may also leave. How to do this? I am always networking for future hires. It is nonstop. It is constant. I'm doing it on social media. I'm doing it in meetings. Any new person I talk to, the second I feel like they might be somebody that I'd be able to employ for the things that I am doing, that part of my brain just kind of clicks on. A really important thing also is making sure, again, with pay, you are moving people up as they are doing a good job. So you're giving them, it has a bit more prestige to it. You are paying them better, and you're being equitable in workloads. Don't overload your best people, because then your best people will leave. And then you will have to go back and try to find another excellent person, which is hard.
David, just a second.
Yeah,
I believe there is a problem with your microphone. I will ask you to try to reset something like that, because there is a huge interference on the microphone there. You are almost not hearing your voice. It happened, I don't know, in maybe 30 seconds ago.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Camera, audio.
It's if you talk, it's better. Just say it's a kind of it's something like a noise reduction thing that's not working. It's adding some kind of.
How's this?
It's better. It's better. It's
okay.
Fine now. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I know we're trying to get to a Q&A, so I'm going to try to go quick. So again, pricing, expenses, scaling the work that you are doing and how you're growing so that you can keep on these really excellent people that you're hiring. But that also sometimes means that if you hire somebody that doesn't work out, you have to be kind of merciless and like, look, you're a good person. I think you're very smart and skilled, but this is not working, and we're going to have to let you go. I've had to do that a couple of times too. It's never fun, but it's basically, if you're in charge, you have to prioritize the health and success of the organization. It requires being kind of ruthlessly objective as often as you can about contributions that somebody might be making. And then finally, in training and mentoring these people so that you are delivering as much knowledge and skill to them as possible so that their ability to do things within your organization that are going to bring value are consistently increasing. So, like I said, this program that I run has been in operation for 10 years. These are all the states from the US that we have managed to get students. I don't know what's up with these 5 states where we've never had a kid come, but 45 out of 50 states, I think, is pretty solid. Now, with kids coming from all these different places, this is where we get most of our students. Most of our kids are coming from these blue circles here. Most of the scholarship money that we are providing as aid so that students can access this opportunity engine, most of that money is going to kids from here and from kind of the outer edges, these lower population areas, or they're coming from the high density areas, but they're coming from lower income portions of it. So we're basically attracting students from these high population areas that tend to be where there's more financial wealth, and supporting the creation and distribution of this product, which is these camps and these opportunities that we're making available for students. And this is where we're located, right here, here in Kansas. So again, relating this to evolution and ecology, some of the things you have to be really kind of aware of. So I put down evolution, changing as things change. Adjusting through this experience, this adventure you may be having in creating some kind of value generating operation like a business. Understanding where your pressures are coming from and moving with them with tactfully and strategically so that you are not getting beaten down by them, that you can try to use them as leverage. A way to think of this is like an ocean wave. You don't want to get crushed by the wave. You would prefer to be able to surf on it. So understanding where pressure is coming from and try to use it to your advantage whenever possible. Leverage technology. Don't do things the hard way if you can help it. If there are technological tools that can help you reduce your work time so that you can put your intellect and your time and energy into other things, and you can afford to get access to them, use them. Understanding how the demand for certain products may shift. None of these things are constant. And being able to adapt to changes in your community is also very important. And not losing sight of the resources and demand in the community that you're in. Again, deeper carrying capacity considerations. The camps program that I run, like I said, we doubled in size since last year. I'm optimistic that this program could probably double in size again over maybe the next 2 to 3 years. Maybe less, maybe more, but somewhere around there. That is because the desire for these kinds of opportunities is still much larger than what we're doing. And the number of kids that are interested in earth and life science is also still much larger than what we're doing. So I understand the carrying capacity of this space, this community that I'm in, this ecosystem, is much larger than what we're fully realized yet. Last section, upskilling yourself. Things for you to do on your kind of road to doing all this stuff. Get used to things failing, get used to rejection. It's super important. It's painful. The sooner you can accustom yourself and move past it, take a deep breath and move on, the better off you're going to be. Writing is crucial. You need to be able to communicate your ideas in writing as well as verbally. Public speaking is super important. Again, these are not negotiable. They're things you have to find a way to get good at. Find ways to get experience, find ways to get people who are already good at these things to give you feedback so that you can learn from them. Don't be afraid of technical tools, both with the skills that you're learning as well as the tools you're implementing in your operations. And then finally, learning how to be a good leader. Being a good leader is not about just being in charge. Being a good leader is about listening to people and being able to guide an operation to keep people enthusiastic, keep them excited about pursuing what might be a very difficult mission that you're attempting to tackle, or some kind of large challenge that you're trying to help solve. So what does that look like? Learn to make asks. Learn how to sell things kindly and with empathy. Writing cover letters, writing reports when you're applying to jobs or when you are submitting outcomes from something you've done. Being able to do interviews, podcasts, invited talks, all of these things are super important for establishing yourself as somebody that knows what they're talking about and getting yourself in front of an audience and showing that you are skilled and competent in the thing that you do. As far as skills, some really easy, good ones: coding, geographic information systems, GIS, and artificial intelligence tools. They may be controversial, but they're not going anywhere. And I recommend that students at least have an awareness of how they work and how they might be able to be leveraged in things that they're trying to do. Organizational tools, Microsoft Teams, Asana is another great one. Agile project management is another really good thing to be aware of and know how to use. And being fundamentally aware that culture in the operation that you are leading, which you will set if you are in charge, culture beats strategy. If no one wants to work for you because you're incompetent, you're not upskilling yourself, you're not being honest about how things are going, they will leave. If you have a bad culture, the best strategy in the world will not work. Culture comes first, strategy comes second when you start having other people working with or for you. Resources, YouTube, online formal courses like Udemy and through websites like LinkedIn are really great. Audiobooks have been huge for me. Audiobooks on business, strategy, leadership, all that good stuff. I wasn't trained in any of this, getting geology or ecology degrees, biology, and having access to expert knowledge and through these resources has been massive for my development. Talk to your customers. Ask them questions, get them to give you feedback. And again, finally, networking, be present, contribute, bring value to these communities as a skilled person with some kind of expertise, it will generate value for you and for your community. And with that, I went a little longer than I wanted to, but I can't wait to hear some of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. The microphone we should just lasted 30 seconds, so it was not an issue at all. So thank you so much. I was thinking about a lot of things during your presentation. Actually, I'm thinking about starting some kind of bird watching service to make money, because we have a lot of different birds here and a lot of people that want to pay a lot of money to see these birds.
Oh, yeah.
And just recognize one problem, maybe.
Yeah.
But I know that there is a few good questions in the comments. Eduardo is working to put them online. But before that, I just want to a quick question.
Sure.
You mentioned about the importance of social media to marketing.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about social media in terms of networking, to people know who you are through this kind of media. What do you think about that?
So some of those tools used to be better than they are now, I will admit. Like Twitter is definitely less effective than it was 5 years ago, but it's still, and there's ethical concerns with even using it, but we won't get into here, but I acknowledge they exist. I think some of it is about what you're trying to do. So if there is I don't know if there's any like social media platforms that are based in Brazil that are used more there than they might be in the US, but go where your audience is. If you're trying to sell something that's you think is broad to biologists in general, you probably want to be able to access people in the United States and in Europe and in China. Like if you have something that you think is big enough for that, social media is a really great way to get access to those people, to get things that are going to get in front of them. If it's more local, then I think social media could still be important, but maybe not as important as just showing up for in-person events and talking to people and developing relationships that are a bit more direct.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Thanks. So, Eduardo, do you have the first one for us? No, that's in Portuguese. So, do you want me to translate? So, I will try to translate. So, in Brazil, we generally have financing are done by the government. The government pays everything. So you don't have this fee funding initiatives, as you said. What do you think the Brazilian researchers can do so we can have more, income from different sources, especially from private?
Yeah. So, I mean, I one of the things that like staying within the bounds of the laws and regulations of wherever you live is certainly important. Just to make sure I say that up front. And my grounding is obviously for here in the United States. But I think finding ways where if you can engage with, how to best put this? There's a saying that I think has a lot of value, which is if you stand next to a big pile of money, some of it will fall on you. So where's the big pile of money? What's a big market? What is a big industry or economy? Like if your goal is to have something that stands a really high chance of being successful, what's something that you know about that's already large? So in the US, for example, healthcare, education, and I mean, those are two of the biggest ones. And so if you are going to create and on finance and stuff like that, but if you can do something that's healthcare related, and healthcare is billions, trillions of dollars, you don't need a huge chunk of that in order to be doing really well. So if you're solving some problem in healthcare using your knowledge of coding or of biological sciences, that's a big pile of money. And if you stand next to it, some of it's going to fall on you. In Brazil, I don't necessarily know what the big industries necessarily are that are relevant or accessible to folks with biology training. But I would imagine that there's is your healthcare through the federal government, or how does that work over there?
Actually, you mentioned the where is the money? The money, for example, I told you that we have 1 million people here, but
Yeah.
in the state, I believe that we have 3 cattle heads for each person.
Sure.
And soy monocultures. It's a agriculture and pasture is all over the state. That's where the money is, especially in our state here.
Right. So if that's the big pile of money, what's something that you can do with biology training that's going to solve a problem for one of those industries? That's going to require you to know something about the industry, and it's going to probably require you to have an internal desire to want to solve it. If you just do it without really caring about who your audience or your customer is, it's going to be hard to sustain long term, because you're going to stop caring about it because it's hard. But if there's some problem, like, what's a good example? Let's say that cattle are there's something that's causing them to have high mortality in some region. Why is that happening? Why is mortality above average? Because those cattle are still going to be consuming resources, but if they die of a disease, they cannot be sold by the rancher. So that's a problem for the rancher as far as whatever's causing this issue. So if you can solve that for them, they will very likely give you money to make that problem go away. Whether or not that's an ecosystem problem, a veterinary medicine problem, microbiology with like some kind of pathogen or parasite or what have you, that requires specific research into the context of that problem. But if the problem is biologically related to something you have skills and training in, that's something you could tackle. Another thing you could possibly do is, if they're looking for ways to understand the data behind their cattle. So like, where are they grazing, and what's the climate or plant life or whatever it is that they're moving through, having some kind of GIS skills so that you can say like, oh, well, we'll send people out, we'll collect a bunch of data on these places where your cattle are, or on the cattle themselves, or we'll draw blood, or whatever the thing is you're trying to do. And then we're going to make that data really easy for you to understand. And we'll send you a really nice report in the mail every 2 months. Or however it is that you're going to create some kind of valuable product for them to use to make their problem go away.
Sure. I just one thing that crossed my mind. We have huge problems here with dengue fever and mosquitoes and scorpions. Actually, people die from scorpion, not bite, but and every year. Right. So that's another problem that could be tackled.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize that solving these problems is, especially if it's a problem that's been around for a really long time, it's probably because it's a really hard problem to solve. And so having a certain level of creative thinking in how to solve that problem gracefully in a way that is elegant and cost effective will likely be very difficult. If it was easy, somebody would have figured it out already. There's lots of smart people that have come before us, and if they haven't been able to figure it out, that's not to say that we can't. That's what progress is. But it will likely require some unique insights and strategy that maybe people haven't tried before. The other angle of that I will emphasize is that there's 2 sides to expertise. You should listen to experts because they have a lot of training and they understand the community, they understand a space very deeply. But what I've also found is that you need to also know when to not listen to them sometimes. So listening to them as far as the depth of knowledge and experience. But I have been told so many times in my career that won't work. That's a bad idea. No one wants that. And I have a track record I'm very proud of proving some very smart people wrong. That requires believing in yourself and your capabilities enough to listen to somebody that's giving you feedback, critical or supportive, taking what is valuable and having the good judgment to say, I understand where this person is coming from, and that they don't think this is going to work based on their training and life experience. We do not have the same training and life experience. So I'm going to take what I can that is valuable from their input, and I'm going to ignore the rest of it, at least for now. I'm going to put it aside. That is one of the most important skills in all of this, because if you're trying to do something new, there's a lot of people who are going to tell you it won't work. There may be people that try to stop you outright for whatever reason. Having the people skills to navigate this, I cannot overstate how important those are. And they take time to learn how to be diplomatic and be like, well, I really appreciate your feedback. I know that you've done a lot of work in this area and you're very, very successful. I'm going to think about what it is you just told me, because I think that there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of value there. I'm going to keep pursuing this thing because I really believe in it myself, but I appreciate you taking the time to give me your insights and your input on this thing I'm trying to do. So making it sound like you're not being petulant, that you're not being negative about it, but also being very clear that, like, I'm going to keep thinking about this, or I'm going to keep working on this problem. Thank you for your time. I'd love to talk with you more about it some other time if you're interested. Because people that are critical can still be a good beneficial relationship. If they're mean, maybe not. Like if they're outright like, I don't like you and I don't like your work, maybe you can just leave that person behind.
Sure.
But finding value where you can, and leveraging it.
Sure. Thanks. Eduardo, do you have another one? So, identifying the problems and becoming an agent to find solutions is the key to start. And do you see that the problems that require some biological science knowledge are underexplored somehow?
I think everything is underexplored. That's my attitude. The reason I think that is that every generation that comes along are standing on the advances of the generation that came before. And so if you're only able to see this high and you advance to here, the next generation that comes along is going to be on top, standing up here, and they're going to start where you ended. So the things that they're going to be able to see and the things that they're going to be able to perceive are automatically going to be greater than the generation that came before them. So I think the trick is being able to internally balance, valuing the knowledge that and knowledge and experience that has been built up over time. You can't ignore that. That's fundamental. It's crucial. And being trained in it deeply is very important. But not to think that that's the end of the road, regardless of what people may say. Like, gosh, what's a good example? So from my end, this is a geology example, but it's one of my favorites. My professors at University of Oregon, when I was in my 20s and undergrad there, they would tell us stories about how when they were in college, their professors were getting into screaming matches in the halls over continental plates existing. Not how they worked, existing at all.
Oh my God.
That was not that long ago. That's in the past 70 years or so, 50, 70 years. So thinking about that, we teach plate tectonics to children now.
Sure.
But less than a century ago, quite a bit less, the smartest people on the planet about this topic were getting into fights at conferences over if it was real. That's the story of the progress of human knowledge and enterprise. So something that may seem controversial or poorly established now, that doesn't mean it's bad or wrong. It means that we need to work on it more.
Sure.
And doing that work is going to take a lot of people and a lot of contributions to do it effectively. So yeah, everything's unexplored. We do not have the level of understanding of the natural world, let alone our reality or our universe, that we think that we do. We incredibly delude ourselves with how well we actually understand these things. We know a lot, but goodness, there is plenty more to do. It just takes, I think it takes cross training. That's one of my big things. So if you do a lot of biology, let's say, have something else you're really excited about and engage with that community too. Intersections between fields are where we find new knowledge. Chemistry, mathematics, physics, pick one. Medicine, is all kinds of stuff involved with making that work. But yeah, pick a sub-discipline and use it to create novel lines of thought. That's what I tell my students anyway, who ask similar questions.
Thanks. Eduardo, another one. So what's the ethical limit of the people that are financing or giving you money, to do research that can induce results that are good for them in your research?
Could you read that again? I just want to make sure I understand.
Okay, what is the ethical limit of this person that you're giving you the money to, help you to do your research that can induce you to some kind of result?
Okay. So people giving you money impacting the outcome of your work.
Yeah, actually trying to impact
your work. Yeah, I mean that's very hard, because as a scientist you want to be able to produce new knowledge, and in order to produce new knowledge you need funding. So that's a very understandable problem. On the other hand, if you are producing faulty knowledge that is flawed due to the subjective desires of a funding source, you're not really creating new knowledge. You're creating an illusion to benefit somebody. So I would say, and I am not a professional researcher, so I feel a little weird having a strong opinion on this, but in my opinion, the second the amount of money gets large enough to where you can't operate without it, and there may be strings attached as far as them dictating your outcome, I would have a real hard time accepting that money. I'll be honest. This is not the only opinion on it, and I know people who have dealt with this question very directly, who have more nuanced opinions, where it's like, if 80% of the work that I do is good, valid work, and I'm publishing that, and then these people are taking the other 20% and using it for some kind of corporate or political angle, does that 20% outweigh the 80% of really good research that came from it? I think that that's a case by case question. And I think that that's a person to person question also. For me, I'm pretty zero tolerance. It's not really something I want to engage with. But man, if I was running a pharmaceutical research lab and we could get 10% closer to a cure for cancer, but we have to accept money from some foundation that I don't really like, and they're gonna, something like that. That's very hard. And I could understand. I don't know if I'd support it outright, but I could understand why someone might accept that funding to progress a bigger picture.
Sure.
Shades of gray and perhaps unhelpful answers.
No, it was great. Eduardo, another one. So you mentioned that there are some skills like that you have to develop, such as statistics or coding, and in relation to the future direction, in the case of to try to develop, these skills, what kind of ability do you think do you think this is the best to learn?
Oh goodness, the best one. Well, that depends on what your goal is, if I'm being quite honest. It's not going to be the same for each person. If your goal is to be a really dynamic researcher, that's going to be different from if you just want a big paycheck, for example. If you want a big paycheck, tech or law are probably the best ones. If you want to be like a real cutting edge researcher, either in academia or industry, I would say mathematics or chemistry would be my votes. Chemistry is medicine. Chemistry is biological research in the academic fields. Mathematics is data and also biomedical, but it's also ecological research and understanding genomes and being able to do high level statistics. So it really depends on what your goals are and understanding what excites you and motivates you in what you're trying to do. And I don't want to create any impression that wanting a big paycheck is bad. I work with plenty of students who that's their goal, and that's great. Frankly, I wish that more students with earth and life science training went that direction, as opposed to maybe getting ground up by the machine that is academia sometimes, because the thing that I preach to my students is, if you can skill yourself up and make a really good paycheck, but you still want to contribute to this field of learning that you really value, but you maybe aren't willing to become a full-time researcher, like that's just not something you're interested in, great. Sure. Go get a job writing policy at the state or national level in government, and work with your academic society as somebody with training in law to help them protect land or fund research or whatever it is that you think you can contribute. Do it through your professional avenue. If you're in tech, you can help develop tools like paleontology. The amount of scanning tech that's coming into the field the past 5 years has been really remarkable. You'll probably see more of it mainstream in the next 10 years, but there's people using like technology that's used for testing airplanes and batteries for flaws, and they're scanning the fossils with them and finding some really incredible stuff. And if you're making big paychecks, you can become a donor. Like, that's another thing. If you're the head of some big, if you work your way up in some company or a law firm or whatever, and you're making a ton of cash, if you're making a lot of money, you can fund a graduate position. You can cut checks to a researcher, no strings, like, here, I love your work. I value what it is that you're doing. I can't do it myself, but I can make sure you have what you need to get it done, to contribute this new knowledge to this thing that I care about personally. That's fantastic. We need more people doing stuff like that too. Sure.
David, just to finish the last one, I really like it. One thing. Oh, sorry. There is another one. Sorry.
You're good. I got time. No worries.
Thanks. So let's see. Usually, there is a lack of financing for a research or a project, and this leads to some kind of disappointment. How can we persist and search for alternatives?
So I'm assuming this is like at the state level in Brazil is what's being talked about here.
Yeah.
So I dealt with a similar thing, not the same, but a similar thing with this summer camp program. There's not a lot of money in the center part of the United States. The carrying capacity is very low. Just because there's not a lot of people, and those people don't have a lot of money like they do like in California or New York or something. So my challenge there was to stand next to the pile of money, even if I'm still in Kansas. So what that meant is, what do people that have the big pile of money, what is something that they value that I can provide to bring in revenue that's not going to compromise the thing that I'm trying to do outright? And so I guess my suggestion would be to be a bit more creative in how you're going about finding funds. This is something that I think would really benefit a lot of scientists, frankly, is that federal funding, at least here in the US, is kind of awful. It sounds like in Brazil, maybe it's not amazing either. So like what else can you do? What are the skills? What kinds of other markets and places can you access? Can you get a presence with people who care about that science in the United States, especially in places that tend to have people that like science more, like again, on the West Coast, on parts of the East Coast of the United States? How can you engage those audiences from a distance, or audiences in Brazil that may also be really enthusiastic about these things? And it also just depends on how much money you need. Like, if $500 would make all the difference in the world, that changes your strategy and probably changes your math a little bit. If you need $500,000 US or the equivalent in Brazil, then you have a much higher hill to climb. But I think it's still quite doable. This is something that really changed my thinking. I have some family that works in tech here in the United States, and the amount of money that they make for the amount of work that they do, they're very skilled and they're wonderful people. But the size of their paychecks for the work that they do stunned me when I first found out about it. Just like, I know plenty of people that can do a lot of this stuff. There's personality differences, but it's not some massive skill difference. And they're pulling in $120,000, $300,000, $500,000 a year in their job. I think people with science training do not understand sometimes how much money exists in the world.
Sure.
Like the carrying capacity in different areas varies incredibly. And so, if, again, standing next to the money piles, if you can tap in, again, this is going to take some creativity. If you can find a way to tap into that and get support, or provide a service or a product that you can bring in decent revenue with, even if it's from out of country. And I know that there's going to be regulations and laws and stuff you'll still have to navigate, but that's going to be true no matter what. This is the reason why I don't do grant funding for this program that I run, is because the dollar figure is low and it's inconsistent. Whereas if I can tap into these interested markets that have more than enough money to sustain these things, I don't need grants. We're giving out, for example, I'm paying all of my staff. I actually pay my instructors more than I make per week. My TAs make about the same amount as I make per week. We're giving out $24,000 in scholarships thus far. It'll probably be higher than that when all is said and done. We're giving out research conference travel scholarships to alumni who are now in college. But that's all a result of scale and standing next to, being adjacent to large piles of money, and then expanding. I'm not going to say that this model works for everyone, but if you can find a way to leverage it for what you're trying to do, I'm not going to say you'll never need a grant again, but creative thinking and creative strategy, I think, is an underutilized skill in research science, in my personal opinion.
Sure. So the last one, there is one thing that you said at the end that to me was very important. And actually, my wife was talking to me about this today. That is getting used to rejection. It seems that there is a new generation, especially the young ones, that they are so afraid of rejection. That it's like it's a new phenomenon, that people at my age was not so afraid of rejection, but this generation is so afraid of rejection.
Sure.
And I thought that this was very, very, very important to say. Do you have any final thoughts on this?
I think that I think that the younger generations understand the stakes a lot more, a lot better than we did at their age. Because of social media and the internet, they just have so much more information that's available to them, and feeling like everything is critical. Nothing is small. And that if they fail once, everything catches on fire. Most of my students, not all of them, but most of my students who are high schoolers here in the US are exactly the same. So here's what I try to communicate to them. That their feelings are not invalid. That feeling like they're under a certain amount of pressure, is fine. But these things are a marathon. They are not a sprint. And some of the most successful people I know, who are maybe even just a little younger than we are, kind of in between, like in their early 30s, the things that they are really good at, they have at least decent topical expertise and skills. They're good to very good. But where they really excel is their ability to be good with people. They have good people skills. If you have good people skills, if you're good at relating to people, if you are good at communicating, and you can accept the fact that doing hard things is hard, and failure is one of the most powerful learning opportunities you have access to, provided it's not like making you homeless or something awful like that. Understanding the value in small to medium-sized failures is one of the most important things that one can take advantage of. So that's how I at least try to communicate with my students. And I understand that I'm in a very different position from them, because I have a job and a regular paycheck with health benefits and all that good stuff we do in the US. And it's a bit brash or maybe disconnected for me to tell them, don't worry about it, because we've already kind of won the contest in having these jobs, and they want jobs like this, and telling them don't worry about it feels very dismissive. But I think to a certain extent, giving them examples and showing them, I mean, I talk to my students about things that I've screwed up all the time. I almost failed out of grad school. You and I almost didn't meet. It wasn't at Oklahoma State Stillwater. I was in a PhD program at the Osteopathic Medical School in Tulsa. It was a bad personality match with an advisor. I was taking graduate level med school classes with a geology degree. So I didn't know any of this biomed stuff coming in. And I got absolutely ground into a fine powder.
Okay, I understand that.
And so that was a very high failure rate for about a year. And I basically got kicked out of the program. I had like a C average in those courses, which when you're in grad school, not going to cut it. And the thing that saved me was taking Barney's and community ecology courses in Stillwater, and just crushing those. So again, an opportunity to do something different, to generate a new skill, to engage another kind of opportunity, fully saved my backside from just leaving grad school completely. And I think if I hadn't had a certain level of like people skills to like talk to Barney and talk about like I'm a paleontologist and I'm in this class that has nothing to do with fossils, but still finding a way to be successful in that environment that was not necessarily built for me, I wouldn't be here. So I also talk to my students a lot about like find the cracks in the problem. Okay, things kind of suck right now. Fair. Is there a little crack? Is there a little light in that problem? Can you see through it? Is there even a very narrow pathway through that you can take a deep breath? Things are terrible right now, and the world is falling down around you. There. Can you move through with some level of agility this narrow path that you have to kind of escape from this thing that's happening, and demonstrate that you are actually a skilled individual? This requires being able to get in front of people who can see you doing the work. Like if Barney had 10 students and just didn't have time for the paleontologist from Tulsa, again, you and I probably wouldn't be talking right now. So it was a matter of making the absolute best I could of a terrible situation, given a small set of wins that I had in 2 classes.
Sure.
And if I hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't have the job that I'm in now. Like I said, you and I wouldn't be talking. I wouldn't have met my wife in Stillwater. Like, those small wins that felt like, oh, okay, so I get to stay in grad school now. Great. Grad school's awful. Good for me. I guess I'll take it. But finding that like I was decent at coding and I liked the ecology more than human anatomy, and then just continuing to build on that. The iteration stuff that I was talking about during the main talk about like, this is working. Let's do more of that thing that's working and do less of the thing that's terrible. You can quit things too. Like, that's fine. If something's really not working, if it's got a high failure rate, take a deep breath. Having
the courage to quit.
Right. Get rid of it. Do the thing that's working and build on that. Don't destroy yourself on something to a point that isn't working. Things are hard, and you have to kind of persevere and work through the hard parts to find success. I definitely did. But at a certain point, it's like this, I can't think of any other way to make this work. Nothing seems to be like sticking. Great. If you've got one thing that's working and 5 things that aren't, focus on the one thing that's working.
Thanks.
And as far as the psychology behind being afraid of failure, what I would tell the students is that no successful person that you admire has ever escaped from any of the different scales of failure. I promise you, every single one of them has small failures monthly, and they have medium failures yearly, and they've had at least a couple of massive failures at some point in their life. It happens to literally everyone, no matter how successful they look to you. So we are all human in that way. Failure unites us.
Yeah. So embrace it.
Yeah. Embrace it as the thing you can learn from, and accept that it is inescapable to a certain extent. That's not saying you want it. We should try to avoid it whenever possible. But it is not a universal death sentence.
There is a thing that we say here in Brazil, that if you are in the hell, So give a hug to the devil, something like that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I understand. David, again, I cannot thank you enough for doing this for us today. We have a lot of comments here saying that the talk was incredible. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Here you have some banners saying this. Yeah. A lot of people saying that really like it. And once again, thank you so much. It was our pleasure to have you here with us today.
Yeah, real quick, I don't know if people use Twitter over there very much. If people want to find me, I'm always happy to chat about this stuff. So this is where you can find me on Twitter. On other platforms that are not Twitter, you can find me at.
Okay, so here, yes.
Yeah, they're there.
Right. Deep Level on Twitter and BioGeoverse on Instagram.
Yeah, there's a couple other ones that I basically snagged the BioGeoverse one just so nobody else would like take it eventually, but I don't use the platforms as much as I should. But I'm there. There's a couple other ones. I think Blue Sky or something like that. I think I'm on Threads, Facebook's little Twitter clone. I obviously, as you can probably tell, love chatting about this kind of intersection between STEM and businessy entrepreneurship things. And if folks have questions about just career strategy, I'm also happy to chat about that or about whatever else. I'm trying to be pretty low key on those platforms when I can help it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Eduardo, do you have any recommendation for us? Is everything okay?
Oh, that's okay.
So,
nice lecture.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, again, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this a lot.
Goodbye, everyone. You're leaving now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Deal.
Let's see.